if you are watching this right now, chances are something is nagging at you. Maybe your kid just doesn't seem like themselves lately. Maybe they're just pulling away from things they used to love.
You might be, slightly noticing some emotional and even physical distancing. Maybe you're noticing some irritability,
There's been shifts in their mood and their behavior that just seems uncharacteristic.
maybe even like fighting amongst siblings, peers.
As a parent, when our intuition is telling us that something is wrong, I think that intuition is really important to listen to. Sometimes it's not about something that's obviously wrong. Sometimes as a parent, we just get a gut feeling. And again, that intuition is really important to listen to. If you are looking for a therapist for your kid for the first time, there are a lot of concerns and worries, anxieties that parents commonly have, and it's normal to have those things.
Some of the feelings that you or also some of the parents that I've had experiences with when they first come in, it's kind of this angsty, I don't know what to do feeling. You're looking for help and you might not know what that help looks like.
There can be a lot of self judgment. Oh my gosh, my kid may need therapy. What did I do wrong? No parent is perfect. No child is perfect. Just like if you wanted your kid to get really good at tennis, you may not be able to coach your kid in tennis. So you may need to get a professional tennis coach to help your kid. Same thing with emotions and communication and resiliency. That may be something that you need some support and helping your kid with. And that's where a child therapist comes in. So you've made the decision to get a therapist for your kid, your child, your teenager. How do you talk to them about this?
It can be a little tricky trying to talk to your child and be like, hey, I think therapy could be a good choice. What I would say is, look, I've noticed a bit of distance, maybe pulling away, and I don't think therapy isn't something where I'm like, you need to be fixed.
This can be a big question and can trip parents up a lot. Because as parents, we have a lot of emotions about this too. And what I encourage you not to do is go from a place of anger and judgment where you're pointing the finger either literally or metaphorically and saying, you need help. It's not going to be helpful. Instead, I really encourage you to find that place of honesty, vulnerability, and compassion and approach it from a place of, I want to support you more. I love you and I want you to have more support. So we found someone who specializes in helping you identify your feelings, explore them, and express them in a healthier way so you can have your own sense of agency and self resilience. That's for a teenager. If it's a little kid, I may add, we've found a person who is an expert in growing up. Little kids really want to grow up, and it helps kind of trigger that thing of I want to grow up and be strong and powerful and have agency in my life. When you're looking for a therapy for a teenager, where do you start? There's a few different places. First and foremost, if you can get a personal referral from someone you trust, that's great because they probably had a positive experience with that person. But you may not want to reach out to your circle. It may not be safe for you to do that. So if you're going to do a search online, you want to find a search for someone who specializes in teens. It is a specialty, it's a niche. Also, I really encourage you to find someone who meets in person.
So, the types of qualities that I think parents should be looking for in a therapist is somebody who definitely encourages collaboration, right? Because obviously, there should be that connection between the child and therapist, but it's not just the child, right? It's the entire family unit. And so, I think building someone who aims to build trust and collaboration is pretty important. And then another quality is obviously, some training with children and family. I would say that's pretty important.
Obviously, if someone has a license, that's great, but also do they have a specialty? And again, I want to reiterate, especially someone who really enjoys and loves working with teenagers may not have their license. They may be an associate or they may be an MFT trainee. That passion for the work, that joy and love for working with teenagers is really important.
Red flag I would look for is probably somebody who's talking about themselves the entire time. If the therapist isn't, asking questions, especially not asking questions about the entire family unit.
But did this therapist take the time to talk to you on the phone, have a full conversation so they really understand what's going on with you and your kid?
Another big red flag is if during the intro session, the therapist does not go over informed consent and confidentiality. I would say that's a red flag because off the bat, those are things that we are ethically and legally required to do.
And again, you want to find someone who loves being a therapist for a teenager. Doesn't even need to be a licensed therapist. It could be an associate or even someone at a training site who's an MFT trainee. But you want someone who's eager because that relationship is the key component to your child's emotional well-being. So when you're looking for a therapist for kids and you've just finished that first phone call, interviewed that therapist, how should you feel? I think what the big feeling is, that therapist gets me. That therapist understands what my concerns are. That therapist understands what my kid is going through. And that therapist has at least a broad understanding of the next steps forward. And if you feel that that therapist is really understanding your perspective, I encourage you to have that first session. What to expect from therapy. Now, you may have got your kid into therapy and you pick him up and you're driving home and you say, "Hey, what'd you guys do? What'd you guys talk about?" And he says, "Oh, we just played a game." And you're thinking, "What? I just spent all this money and they just played a game? What am I paying for?" I think you're paying for good therapy. That's what I think you're paying for.
That is a huge, huge way to build rapport. That essentially is my way in to discuss kind of deeper feelings that some kids aren't just going to throw out at you off the bat, right? But for example, if we're painting and I'm like, "Oh, like what type of feeling, where is this coming from?" They'll be like, "Oh, well, I did bad on assignment this week, so I'm feeling sad," right? But for an 8-year-old, that's more difficult to be like, "Okay, I'm just going to be forthcoming about this exact emotion and be able to identify and process it."
Play is how kids communicate, especially the younger they are or the more development delayed they are. They're probably going to do more playing than talking, which is normal. However, a good therapist is going to recognize themes in play that are plaguing your kid in their life. I've had many sessions where I've been playing games for a while, and all of a sudden, when we're playing, the kid looks at me and goes, "You want to know what I'm thinking about?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do."
So it gives you the freedom and ability to address and explore things that you probably wouldn't be able to without play.
It's really important that your kid understands that what they say in session is confidential, even confidential when it comes to you.
Obviously, as a parent, you have every right to be concerned about your kid, and it can be nerve wracking, right? Because when you hear confidentiality, it's like, wait, I'm the parent. I should be able to know everything about my child. And of course, confidentiality is what that means is like everything stays inside the therapy room, besides if there's harm to self or threat of harm to others, right?
Now, I understand you're their parent, you love them, you are their key champion, but if the therapist becomes a conduit of information of what's being said, your kid's never going to trust that process. They're never going to open up.
That confidentiality is enables trust. And without that, that therapy wouldn't be what it is.
If your kid's talking about something that is dangerous, that they are in danger or someone's putting them in danger, we're all mandated reporters. We can't keep those secrets. My goal as a therapist is to bring you into the session at some point and have your kid look you in the eye and tell you what's going on. How do you know if it's working? It's not always easy to tell because things can sometimes get worse before they get better.
And so it kind of will look like this, and then it'll look like this, right?
Emotions can get a little bigger. Reactions, behaviors can get a little bigger because they're working through stuff. This is pretty normal. It's not a linear thing.
When we're trying to change a pattern that's probably been ongoing for a relatively long time, sometimes when we attempt to break that system, things will start to be like, whoa, what's this reaction?
So, what I always recommend is evaluate therapy in 3 month chunks. Because if you're trying to evaluate therapy week to week, it's like watching grass grow and it's going to drive you crazy.
I think you start noticing, okay, there's less distance between us. There's probably less, I guess, quote unquote, acting out those behaviors that you probably noticed in the beginning, or even those were the reasons as to why you were concerned or initially interested in bringing your kid to therapy in the first place. But there's no one right way to describe progress. I think you can see it when your kid starts expressing themselves more freely.
If you can see certain things are getting better, maybe your kid's getting a little more open at home, but they're still ditching school. Okay, what's going on there? But over 3 months, you have a better idea of what's going on. That may not be 3 months is all you need. You may need more than that. But evaluating therapy in 3 month chunks is a really healthy way to evaluate the effectiveness of therapy.
All right. So if you are a parent looking for therapy for your kid, we would love to help you, hear you out, and even point you in other directions if you eventually realize that we're not the right fit. There will be someone that is the right fit for you and your child, and I hope it can be us.